Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. My name is Juri Love. I'm your host. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today we are recording episode 150. Before I introduce our guest, I want to introduce my book, which is the same title as this podcast. It's called A Gift from Adversity. It's available on Amazon, A Gift from Adversity by Juri, Juri, Love. The subtitle of this book is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. After I experienced all of these things and published this book in 2020, I got a lot of messages from all over the world, people sharing their adversities. So I decided to create this podcast, A Gift from Adversity, but not only the challenges that people had to overcome, but this podcast shares the tools that people use and that worked and a gift that came from it. And I'm very excited to have another benchmark of having 150 episodes and guests are from all over the world. So I'm very grateful. So let's invite our guest for today. Hi, Ellie. Thank you very much for coming in to 150th episode of A Gift from Adversity today.
Congratulations. Wow, that's a big milestone for you. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm
So
honored
can
to
you,
be here.
thank you. Can you tell our audience your name, where you're coming in from today, but maybe where you are originally from also, and then what you do for work, and if you have any social media that you want to promote?
Yeah, so my name is Eli Escobar, and I originally came from El Salvador. But I'm from Massachusetts now. I live here in Massachusetts, obviously, and I let me see what was your social media. I
Yeah.
only really have Instagram, and that's Ellie. You can find me in Instagram as Ellie Escobar Actress, because that is what I do since 2016. Um, I do full time acting and also have a full time job working with the homeless and less, privileged folks in the Massachusetts area. um, yeah, I think I cover all your questions, maybe.
Well, thank you very much. So let's dive into the first question, which is the adversity. So can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
Well, my adversity is it's like a little pot, right, where all these things go into it. Um, One of the adversities that I had to that I went through is coming to this country not very young and not knowing English, not being able to speak English, um, uh, finding myself bullied at high school and during the high school years, especially when I first came to the United States, and especially because it was a predominantly Caucasian high school that I went to, so I looked different. Um, I also had to, uh, and this is hard, but there was a bit of a domestic violence involved in my life with my son's dad, whom I married and met when I was 16. Um, and so, yeah, that's pretty much what I consider my moments of adversity in my life.
I know previously that we had you on a show called My Immigration Story, and then you told us about how you came to this country, which I thought it was very traumatic. Can you? I know you told a little bit about you coming to America at young age. Would you mind to tell us how old you were and why you had to come and why you had to come alone to America?
Yeah. So when I was turning, was actually just finishing my school year in El Salvador. in the 1980s. At that time, was very dangerous because of the war. There was a civil war going on, and that's an adversity also that I had to encounter in my life as a child. Um, when I was 11 years old is when it really all makes sense to me that there was something wrong with my country. It's when you no longer are a child and have to grow up really fast, right? So until I was 11 years old, everything was golden. I'm just being a child. But when I was 11 years old, I started noticing what was going on in all the soldiers and the big tanks and the helicopters, and I started hearing in the fighting. You hear in the distance, you hear bullets, not bullets, but the gunfire going on, and it's a scary situation. I also used to see dead bodies on the road going to school. That was dramatic because you see the bulky things, right, on the road, and you're like, "Whoa, what's that?" And then coming back from school one time when I was 12, I got caught under fire just a few steps before my grandma's house. Um, I had to stand behind a pole, like a telephone pole, and I could hear the bullets go by. And my parents thought I was dead because they heard on the radio that there was a gun. There was going to be a confrontment, and that's what they call it, between the soldiers and the rebels at that time in that area. And so my mom closed her business and ran to my grandma's house. And when she got to my grandma's house, she's like, "Where is she? Where is she?" And they call me La Niña because La Niña means little girl. Where's La Niña? Where's La Niña? And no one knew where I was. And then after the fire ceased between the two parties, the lady who housed me in her apartment brought me to my grandma's house. It was a neighbor, my grandma's neighbor. And my mom sees me coming in and she's like, "Oh my God, there she is. She's not dead." So that was a traumatic experience. And it was something that stays with you, even when you get older, it stays with you. If I drive on the highway and I see bags on the roadway, in my mind, I'm thinking, I wonder if there's a dead body in that bag. I wonder if there's a dead body wrapped in that blanket on the road, or if I'm on the highway. Um, when my son was about 7 months, and I was with my husband at the time, he forgot his key and he started throwing rocks at the window. And in my mind, I grabbed my son and I went underneath the bed, thinking I was back in El Salvador. And I thought those were bullets, and that's why I hid under the bed. And then finally, I realized, like, wait, I'm not in El Salvador. Because that's what you used to do. You used to, as soon as you heard the fighting between the two parties, you would go on the floor so that no bullets will come through your window and you could get hit by. So everyone hid under the bed. Everyone was on the floor, just dodging those bullets. So that was probably the biggest event in my life, for me, experiencing the war.
And how did you come to United States? I know you mentioned that your parents didn't come, but just you.
Yes. So at the time, in El Salvador, young girls like myself at 14, even younger, 11 years old, were being kidnapped by soldiers. Now, at that time, we didn't fear the rebels, but we feared the soldiers. They were they were mean. They would kill you. They were massacre. There was a village that was completely massacred in El Salvador. Old, pregnant women, children, 2-year-old children were killed by this sergeant from the army with his soldiers. So at that time, being a young girl was hard because you could run the risk of being kidnapped, raped, and murdered and thrown into a ditch. So my parents did not want that to happen. They were living in constant fear of my life. And so my uncle had come to the United States, I think in August of that year, 1980. And because he was here in Massachusetts already, had the privilege, I want to say, to have a place to come. I don't think that if my uncle had been here, I would have been able to come to this country. I would have to just live through the whole thing. Um, but I was blessed that my uncle came a few months before. So by the time my parents decided to put me in a plane by myself at that young age, where I had never been on a plane before, I'd never been out of my country. Um, and one day I'm sleeping in my bedroom, and the next day they're like, "You're going to the United States." I said, "What? I why?" I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to my friends. It was just like you pack, you get your visa, your residence. And that's another thing. My dad worked for the American Embassy, so he was a chauffeur to the ambassador, and he ran a high risk because at that time the United States wasn't welcomed in the country. So um, he was at a high risk, and so the ambassador's wife was able to get us legal stay here in the United States right away. And she was the one that was like, "Get out of here, take your family, it's gonna get worse." You know, they loved my dad's work, and how he was a great worker for them, and they kind of had a love for him that we were blessed in that sense. So they put me in a plane. Didn't get to say goodbye to any of my friends. I just finished my schooling, and I remember sitting in a plane looking at all my family saying goodbye to me at the airport, and me sitting on that plane thinking, "Why am I here? Why am I sitting here?" And my mom and my dad and my little brother sitting up, standing over there, and I couldn't conceptualize at that time why. I understood that it was because of the war, but I couldn't understand why I had to come by myself. And then without coming here was an ordeal because, you're on a plane, you never traveled before, and the plane makes a stop in Belize. And I'm thinking, oh, are we in the United States now? And the lady was like, "No, honey, we're just, in Belize." And I go, I don't even know. So we finally got to Miami. There's a I don't know if you know about this doll that comes to different countries. It's been advertised. I forget her name. This is a giant doll, and it's like they work it like a puppet. And she's visited the United States, and this doll has this green. So this doll represents immigrants that have to refugees that have to leave their country for whatever reason. So the doll is in the style of a young girl, and this doll came to New York, and I couldn't go see her, but I wanted to. She reminded me of myself at that age coming to the United States, and she has a green luggage that's the same color of the luggage that I carry that day. And it was two huge luggages, and I couldn't even. I'm talking about I'm 75 pounds at that time, right? And I'm dragging these two big luggages. So I had to pull one, put it on one side, and come back and get another one. Next thing I know, some guy picks up my two luggages and walks away with them, and I'm running behind him in the Miami airport. "My luggage, mi valija, mi valija, mi valija." And I'm so scared. It was still in my luggage. Finally, he gets me to the counter, and the person there speaks Spanish because it's Miami. So I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "Oh, he's just one of those people that carries your luggage, so you have to tip him." Oh, okay. So I gave him a $20 bill. He's like, "That's too much money." I'm like, "Well, what do I know? I don't know the currency." And anyhow, so I made it to Boston and Delta flight. It was so cold here. It was November. Believe it was around the 22nd of November when I arrived. And it was cold. I was totally disoriented. I was, it's like surreal. I was in one world and now in a different world, and everybody speaks a language that I don't understand. It was hard. It was that year, my first year here in the United States. Mind you, that I've just finished my school in October. So school starts here in September. So it already started. And my uncle was like, "You don't need to go to school," because I arrived on a Sunday. And he was like, "You don't have to go to school. Relax." I'm like, "No, I'm going to school. I'm going to school." So I went to school the next day, and I ended up going to the bathroom and vomited because that's how nervous and anxious I was that day. And I went to private school in El Salvador, so I wore a uniform, but here there was no uniform. Um, I just didn't fit in. It didn't. And so for that year, I cried a lot. I was scared for my parents and my little brother that were still over there within the war. I was not at rest. Yes, I was safe here, and it felt really nice to walk on the street. And not, I was like, the first time I went outside, I remember, and I'm like looking and I'm thinking, wait, I don't hear the fighting. I don't hear the bang, 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 bang. I don't hear anything. And then I knew that at that point, I knew that I was going to be okay. But it wasn't okay until my parents were going to be with me. Because then I felt that my whole world was here together. So for a year, it was the hardest thing. I almost wanted to leave. I wanted to go back, and I had an English teacher, my English as a second language teacher, which whom I connected so well. She basically is the one that encouraged me to stay and gave me that support that I was looking for. That my uncle couldn't give me, my auntie couldn't give me, my cousins couldn't give me, even though I have my uncle and all my cousins here. There was something missing, right? So my teacher was the only one that really it just made me feel like you're gonna be okay. They're gonna be okay. And she's the one that encouraged me to write. And I think this is the reason why I love writing so much. So I do write. I have a lot of written material. I just never been published or done anything with it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's very traumatic, and then I don't think anyone has any idea. A lot of people obviously never were exposed to a war like yourself, and then living in the United States. We've had some guests talked about the war, but I know you mentioned also a little bit about um, the challenges that you had at school, like bullying and discriminations and stuff, despite you are safe at the country that has no war at age like 14, it's unimaginable. But how did it affect you for people maybe not treating you the way that it should be?
Um, Alone, I guess I felt alone for a long time. Even my first year in high school, um, in my country, I was very active with different activities. Right, I did dancing. I did a little bit of, I did dancing. I did plays. I did singing. I sang in the national choir of my country for a few years, and I played basketball. So all those things ended, and I came here. And when I went to try and sign up for these things at the school that I was going to, I kept finding closed doors. People, teachers, teachers were like, "No, you can't join. You don't speak English, or you don't look the part." I tried to join the dance theater and drama group because I so much wanted to continue to do stage acting. They didn't let me. They said that my look was not going to be welcomed in stage productions because I look like, just too indigenous. They said, and they said that I didn't speak English, so I couldn't do it. And I even said I do background stuff, and they're like, no, that's okay. So a lot of closed doors. Um, I had a health class once, and it was all females. It was all girls, and and they would, whenever I would walk by the the aisles to get to my seat, they would kind of trip me, so I will fall. And I was just like, really? And I had this coat that wasn't the best coat. It looked like, I don't know if you've seen the girl from the Breakfast Club. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's called The Breakfast Club. There's a girl that's like the odd girl in the movie. And I relate to this girl so much since I was a teenager, because I am she she's me, and she wears the same coat. So I'm like, that's me in that movie. And I forget her name in the movie, but I know the actress is called Ali something. And she had the black eyeliner, and the hair was short. My hair was short at that time. So she is the character that I most related to in that movie. And I thought, that's me. So I used to wear the same coat. Really, it wasn't like everyone was wearing like stylish clothes, but I wasn't. And it didn't even dawn on me that I wasn't, because it didn't even matter. I'm My mind is somewhere else. My mind is still in El Salvador. So whatever you did to me, I don't really care. But what I did do one time is, so this class had to be done the whole year. And in senior year, I had learned to speak English well. It took me, my teacher was amazing. She just grilled me. I was going after school to learn from her. I wanted to learn English. I wanted to learn it. I wanted to speak like the Caucasian girls did, right? And so I did it. So I would just, let's study, let's study. So I walked in the high school with three different dictionaries. It was the English language, the Spanish English, and then the Spanish. Three dictionaries. But by senior year, in that health class with the same girls that used to treat me over, laugh at my face, and be like, "Oh, look at her hair. Look." They were just so, mean girls. They really exist. Mean girls exist. And it wasn't even the boys, it was just the girls. And I just think, like, sometimes females can be so harsh on one another, so mean. And maybe that's why I grew up not having girlfriends, but I had boyfriends, boys that I hung out with, because they didn't judge me. They just accepted me. And and so I ended up having on my senior year, I ended up doing a presentation. And when I stood in front of them to do my presentation, everybody's presentation went no problem. They listened, they were in tune with that person. I go up there to do my presentation. What do? They all turn to each other and start talking to each other. Like I wasn't even there. And I'm so nervous. My English is not my first language. And they didn't even give me the respect. So I just said, okay, fine. And I said, excuse me, it's time for my presentation. I know you guys don't like me, but you gotta let me do my presentation today. And I think they were shocked that I finally spoke, because I didn't speak before. I was too afraid to, you know. So
Yes, I'm so sorry. And then, um, I think as an immigrant, like even adulthood, like I went to high school for 6 months in America, but then when I migrated here and then started the school, um, American kids told us like Japanese band like effing like Jap, and last year I quit my job because I was called Chin Chin Ding Dong at a cafeteria job. I'm like, I'm close to senior discount. I don't want to deal with this, so I quit the job. And it's weird because as an adult, you can kind of like have a choice and then see the red flags right away. But as a kid, it took you for long to stand up for yourself.
Mhm.
I was like immediately like when discrimination happened, I just like left work. I just walked out that same day because I know it's BS, and then you can't change people's mind if they are racist or have problems with immigrants and they would not get along, but there are people who respect you. So I'm so um, proud of you for really sticking out in that moment when you are doing the presentation and then being able to speak out for yourself. And sometimes it's very, very, very hard. Your heart must be racing when you said that to stand up for yourself. But I want to respect your time and I want to move on to the second question, which is the tools that you use to overcome. And you had stuck of adversities that you had to overcome as a child,
Mhm.
but as an adult also. Some of the tools, and this is my favorite part of the podcast that people shared, are really practical and sometimes unheard of that I actually was able to apply for myself, for my children. So, Ellie, what are the tools that worked for you to overcome all these extreme adversities that worked for you?
Yeah. Um, when I was young and going through the adversity, uh, one thing that started to work for me was getting a notebook and writing. That notebook became my companion. And the reason that notebook became my companion is because I didn't feel confident enough to talk to a grown up about what was going on in my life at that point, what I was feeling. But I was able to write down my thoughts and my feelings in this notebook that eventually became a way of me writing journals for years and years. I've been writing in journals. And I found that at a very young age, and I think it might have been right after a year after I was here, of putting up with so much, wanting to go back to. It was so hard here that I wanted to go back to the war. That was like, if you can think about that, like, why would anybody pick war over being in a safer place? And while it was safer, it wasn't safer for me mentally and emotionally. Um, Physically, El Salvador wasn't giving me, the safe place, but I was with my parents. I was with people I knew in my own place, with my own language, with my own people. And I don't think most people that are born here are not ever going to understand why you have that connection to that country, even though you've lived here for years. So writing in my journal became a thing a year after I've been in this country, and every day I would write about my day and how it went and what happened and who. I name every character by name, like, this is what Sandy did to me today. This is what happened at school. And so one of the tools for me was the notebook and the pen. Just going into that world that became my my escape, my therapy, I think. Because I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have that. And again, the one woman that helped me through these and taught me that was my English teacher, which later, by the way, became my son's godmother. Uh, so she taught me, try to release your emotions here. So my adversity, I started writing in my journals, but also towards the later years, and I have to tell you, high school was just the beginning of the discrimination and the racism that I encounter. Like you, Juri, I've had it in jobs with supervisors. with coworkers. Uh, I find it in so many places, even now as an adult. But I think for me, getting through the adversity was not focusing on the adversity itself, but looking forward to what I could do, telling myself that, you know what, don't lose yourself. Stay true to who you are. By staying true to who I was then and who I am now, it's what gets me through anything, even now, because people will come at you different directions. But me staying focused in my lane, saying, okay, X could come to me and say, I look like this, and B could come to me and say, I look like this. But when I look forward, and there doesn't have to be a mirror in front of me, I just know who I am. I know my values, I know my morals, and I stand by them. And I don't care what anybody says about me. I don't care what anybody thinks I look like or don't look like. Um, it doesn't matter to me. I know that I made it so important for me to become an honor student in high school, um, that my focus was my school, my studying. That saved me, and I love school since I was a little girl. So all of that became kind of like it was a dark cloud over me, but because I didn't let that dark cloud overcome and take everything that I am, and focus on my studying, focus on the things that I love to do, it made it much easier to get through the years. And that's how I do it now. Whenever I have any issues, any negative energy, anything, I go to my journal. I have tons of journals, uh, and I write every night. I write into my journals. Life has become easier because I learned early in my life. This is when I was 16, 17. I learned that people are mean, but you gotta stay focused on your goal. My end goal was to be great at anything that I did, and no one was going to derail me from that. So, journaling was my therapy. Journaling taught me who I was. If I read my journals from back then now, I see this young girl that was in turmoil, that was ready to just lose it, cried. And then one day you can see the switch in my journals when I first came to this country to when I was ending senior high school. Totally different girl. Stronger woman, young girl, a stronger young girl. And there was no one could take me off that train. No one. It's just I was in there. It was like enough, you know.
Well, thank you very much. Before I move on to the next question, um, let's shout out to the ELS teacher, um, English as second language, and the godmother of your son. What's her name?
Cheryl Davidian.
Cheryl. Thank you so much for helping Ellie on her behalf and on her on other immigrants' behalf. That some people like her. For me, there was a man named Ed Little. He passed away, but he was my mentor for years. And if it wasn't Ed, I don't think I'll be here. So even if it's one person that can change your life and can encourage you to the star. So I'm really grateful for Cheryl. So shout out to her.
It's why I became a high school teacher after a few years later. I went to teach at the same high school to work with the immigrant students, to be able to help them get through their issues arriving at the high school. So
Before we move on to the last question, I know you have to go, but I just want to share a little bit of my experience where I was heavily bullied at work in Japan and school. And then just like you, one day I stood up for myself and I said, "Were you born to bully me?" This is in Japan.
Mm.
Wanting to bully me, and what is your life mission? And it stopped after I threw that question. So sometimes people are lost and have OCD
Mhm.
and insecurity anchors towards somebody who doesn't look like you. However, we are the same citizens. Like, in America, there are many immigrants that you can target onto and then focus on to OCD on you. But in Japan that happens as well. So I would say not racism, like bullying happens universally, unfortunately, due to the insecurity and lack of their upbringing. So it's not per se that that person's fault, but maybe something was lacking and then found out that person kind of most almost incarcerated in the earlier life. So, I do have a compassion, but I don't have time for being their mother to
Mhm.
recorrect their moral. So I would say to my children included to really focus on people who are working in their lives. That that means the people who are established or really found the meaning to basically not target others are there, like Cheryl. So I would say it's really, I wouldn't say like dating, but it's almost like reading through these people and then finding the red flags and then signs that I don't know how many people that I had to block for even past 6 months. But what I'm saying is when you reach a same certain level of your life that you just don't have time for bullshit. So you just have to really look forward. I wrote on the comment, not focusing on adversity, but stay true to yourself and look forward. That was one of the message that you had. So I really appreciate you shedding the light. And then I'm so sorry that this war happened outside of your control.
Mhm.
And also, even if you came to this country that you experience this extreme unsafety mentally, not physically by bullets, but mentally, that's really hard. So
Mhm.
I really want to validate that and really appreciate you sharing it because we don't know who are listening to this podcast and the people who might be arriving this country due to the war that's happening in this world right now. This is a very valuable opinion because you overcame that and really survived not only the war, but mentally in bullying and in abuse that you had experienced. So I really appreciate you.
Mhm.
So let's move on to the last question, which is a gift that came from the adversity. So Ellie, can you share with our audience what was the gift that came from your adversity?
I think the gift for me, you mean the gift to the world or to others or to myself?
A gift that came from the adversity.
Okay. Um, I guess for me, it it made me a stronger woman. I want to say it the adversity could have made me weak and a victim. And oftentimes we call ourselves victims. And and we are, right? Because we've experienced these adversities with these events. But I refuse to call myself a victim because I feel that if I saw myself as that, I would not grown to be who I am. My gift was to, I guess for me, it was just to be able to help others similarly in the same situation. So I've been doing jobs for a long time. I've been doing jobs where I help other immigrants that come to this country get settled and understand how the system works here. I used to teach a class called How to Ask the Right Question. This was geared towards parents and their children and know how to ask the question in the school systems. So my gift became um, I guess I became a teacher. That was my gift. I wanted to give to the world back the essence that you're gonna go through all of these adversity in this country because you're not it's not your country. You don't speak the English. You don't know the system, but that there is a way to get through it, and I'm gonna teach you how to do it. So my gift was to become a teacher, to teach others, to educate them, and to also help them feel comfortable. And I think that all stems from my own teacher. And so I became that teacher. I wanted to give the world the gift of strength, and that's what I got. I got the gift of strength so much that what anyone says about who I am or tries to tell anything about my character, it doesn't even touch me. It's like, think of a superhero where you grow this superpower, right? Well, what's my superpower? Well, my superpower is that there's this shield that I have that you can throw any kind of words at me, and they're not going to touch me. And through that superpower, I give that encouragement and that gift to others who may be in a place where I was years ago, so that they can also grow to be strong. So I think for me, the gift is the strength that I earned from the adversity by not allowing anyone to push me around anymore. And it all comes down to um, the strength comes from within me, which means that at one point or another, I told myself, "You're better than they are. You're better than this. You are enough." And that confidence just grew for me. So I think that's, we all go through different adversities and we all get different gifts after the adversity. And we're so lucky that some of us do get through the adversity. Unfortunately, some don't ever are able to overcome the adversity, and it's really sad. But because it's so easily to not overcome the adversity, it's so easy to just let it consume you, right? So my gift to me was to not allow myself to not know who I was, by allowing myself to understand where I came from, where I was standing, and where I was going. Having a clear set of uh, vision of who I was and where I wanted to go, what's the gift that I give to myself. And that's the gift I give to others that are in similar situations. We tend to forget who we are because everything comes at us at the same time. So we come to this country, everything's coming at us, or we're going through bullying, and we close in, or maybe we're in an abusive relationship and we think that that's okay, that's love, and we close in and we really disconnect from ourselves, from our true selves, and we lose that identity goes out the window, and we identify with the negative, with the adversity. Is that easy to do? No, it's hard to not let the adversity consume you. Are there ways to get out of that? There are. And the first thing I think for me to do to get out of the adversity and to not let the adversity consume me was by simply just having a clear vision of where I wanted to go. And that was it. And that once I knew that, um, and people are gonna be like, well, how do you get a clear vision, right? Of where you want to go? Like if you're in this place right now, suffering, and you're being hit and you're being emotionally yelled at and whatnot, and you're in a war, how do you even have a clear vision of where you want to go? Right? I think it's love. You gotta love yourself enough to do that. Well, how do I love myself if I'm in this situation? Well, did you forget who you were? And it's not about soul searching. That soul searching thing doesn't. It's not about that. It's really about just never losing sight of who you were born to be, or who you were born to be. When I was 14, I was going through the worst chaos of my life. By 17 years old, I knew that I wasn't born to be a victim. I wasn't born to be bullied. I wasn't born to be stuck in the situation of fear, of anxiety, of feeling like I'm not good enough for anything. Right? That's when I realized that I'm like, I was born to be something great. I don't know what it is yet, but and if you ask me today, have you fulfilled that vision? That have you become that great person? And people measure your greatness by your fame and your glory. They'll say like, well, you really are not that great at anything because you really didn't become like a published author or um, a speaker of anything out there, right? And I said to myself, it's not that's not the greatness I'm looking for. I'm great because I got myself out of that bad situation on my own with how I looked at life. Yeah, maybe I'm not in a famous with a lot of fortune, with a lot of money, in published author or whatever. What makes me great? It's me. It's just me. I'm happy. I am, living a life of peace and love and harmony. And isn't that just freaking great? So yeah, I I I told myself when I was 17, I'm gonna be something great. And that's exactly where I am. I'm something really great. I'm great for my son. I'm great for my parents. And to me, that's the whole idea of greatness.
Well, thank you very much. Before I let you go, I have a big favor. I want you to speak something in Spanish to especially Spanish speaker who might be listening to this podcast for some advice. So, por favor, dame un consejo en español.
Bueno, los que les quiero decir, los que están escuchando, los que están pasando por una adversidad fuerte y creen que están perdidos, que no hay solución a sus problemas, les quiero decir que siempre hay una solución. Siempre habrá una solución. Es más fácil decirlo que hacerlo, pero lo que yo he aprendido en esta vida, mm, que no hay nada, que todo es posible cuando comienzas a enfocarte en la persona que tú eres, cuando comienzas a amarte a ti misma o mismo y cuando le das una ayuda, una mano a otra persona que esté en un lugar peor que tú eres lo mejor en este mundo y que tienes un talento para dar al mundo, un regalo. Todos tenemos un regalo para dar al mundo. Encuéntralo y si no sabes cómo hacerlo, escribe en un libro, que es lo que me ayudó mucho a mí, escribir, escribir. Y no tiene que ser un, un libro bien bonito, puede ser cualquier libro, cualquier cuaderno, cualquier lápiz. Comienza a escribir y eso te saldrá de todas las dudas, de todas y te va a dar soluciones. A veces no nos sentamos a pensar, solo hacemos. Toma un tiempo, unos 10 minutos, unos 15 minutos en el día. Si estás pasando por una adversidad, tómate unos 15 minutos de tu día y reflexiona. ¿Quién soy yo? Yo soy esto, yo soy aquello, y esto es lo que voy a hacer. Y enfócate en eso y saldrás adelante.
Muchas gracias.
De nada, me encanta que hables español y lo entiendes.
Oh, muy gracias. So thank you very much for Ellie for coming to a very special episode of A Gift from Adversity 150th. And I want to thank our audience who are following this podcast and being supportive over the years. I am really grateful for guests like yourself and then all the guests that came before and more to come. So have a wonderful day.
I
And
do
then,
want to say one thing,
yes,
Juri. I want to say to the audience that's listening that I met Juri through, it was through Facebook that we met. Um, and the reason that I love Judy is because of all her adversity. And I got to get me that book, by the way. Through all the adversity, you are what you do, it's so inspiring to me. And, you know, to me, the things, you're a woman of many talents. And for any woman listening out there who is going through an adversity, I can't wait to read your book, but I am assuming that I'm going to learn from you how you get to where you are and who you are right now. And who you are right now is a woman, it's a strong woman that gives so much to, you probably don't even know it, but by me just following you on Facebook and listening to your everyday tasks makes me strong, makes me like, what am I doing? I love that you have that. You inspire me to be even better. And I think that seldomly we find a person in our lives that can do that, right? You know, like my teacher, my ESL teacher, you're kind of like that ESL teacher in itself. You are to me like, when I follow you, when I see what you do, I'm like, oh, I love this woman. She's at it again. She's like, oh, she's like a little Speedy Gonzalez, right? And I love it. I love your stamina, your energy, and that you don't give up. And what you teach your children, those young kids, that boy and that girl are going to go. Greatness is what you are. And I don't mean by famous as glorious, just by giving us. You don't even know that you give the world all of this, but you give it to us. I know I feel it. So thank you. I want to say thank you for that.
thank you. I have no idea. I'm just driving around everywhere. But
We're listening. We're listening. We're watching.
I really, really appreciate you shouting out for everything I do. And I really care about others and then, well-beings and stuff. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And have a wonderful day. And then thank you again to our audience.
Thank you, Juri. Thank you.